In 1976, a British archaeologist named George Smith was digging through the ruins of Nineveh when he pulled from the earth a clay tablet covered in cuneiform so dense it looked machine engraved. His notes describe contents no ancient civilization should have known. 6 months later, Smith was dead of dysentery in Aleppo at 36, having published nothing. 7 of his diaries were shipped to London, 4 were archived, the other 3 vanished into a private office. The tablet itself was filed under a catalogue number almost no academic discussed for a century. It claimed the sky has a physical ceiling. What you're about to hear concerns one of the most controversial tablets ever pulled from the ground, because the numbers written on it correspond to measurements that modern science was only able to make from 1958 onward. Not interpretations, not vague poetic imagery that can be bent to fit anything. Numbers. If you enjoy this kind of mystery, the kind that doesn't resolve neatly by the end, go ahead and like the video, because this one is going to stay with you. The first line of the tablet, translated literally, reads, "The sky is a vault. The vault has walls. The walls have an end." Now, on its surface, this might sound like nothing more than primitive cosmology, and to be fair, the idea of a solid sky is not unique to the Sumerians. The ancient Egyptians imagined the sky as the body of the goddess Nut, arched over the earth. The Greeks spoke of crystalline spheres. The Hebrew Bible describes a firmament, a hammered-out dome separating the waters. Nearly every ancient culture at some point looked up and concluded that what they were seeing had to be a surface, something solid, something with a boundary. If the tablet stopped there, it would be a footnote. An interesting one, perhaps, but a footnote. The Sumerians didn't stop there, because the very next passage does something that no other firmament text in the ancient world does. It gives a measurement, a specific numerical height for the ceiling of the sky, recorded in a unit of distance the Sumerians used for long journeys, a unit called the beru. Scholars have known about the beru for a long time. It appears in administrative records, in itineraries, in military logistics. Based on those documents, most Assyriologists place the beru at approximately 7 miles, the distance a traveller was expected to cover in 2 hours of steady walking. And the number the tablet provides is extraordinary. 12,000 berus above the plain of the rivers. The plain of the rivers, the land between the Tigris and the Euphrates, Mesopotamia itself. Do the conversion. 12,000 berus at roughly 7 miles each places the supposed ceiling of the sky at approximately 84,000 miles above the surface of the Earth. Now, at first glance, that number seems to prove the whole thing is fantasy. The sky, as any modern person knows, does not have a ceiling at 84,000 miles. The atmosphere, for all practical purposes, thins into nothing a few hundred miles up. The moon is nearly 239,000 miles away. 84,000 miles corresponds to nothing visible. Nothing a person on the ground could ever point to. If a scribe were inventing a mythological sky dome, you would expect a poetic number, 7 layers, 12 gates. Something round and symbolic. Not this. And here is the detail that keeps researchers up at night. 84,000 miles is not nothing. That altitude corresponds, with a margin of error of less than 3%, to the region where Earth's magnetosphere transitions into the outer boundary of the Van Allen radiation belt system, the vast, invisible structure of charged particles trapped by our planet's magnetic field. Let that settle for a moment. The magnetosphere is not something you can see. It is not something you can feel. It does not glow. It does not cast a shadow. It produces no sound. It is a physical, measurable boundary in the space around the Earth. And humanity had no idea it existed until January 31st, 1958, when the United States launched Explorer 1, the first American satellite. The instruments on board, designed by a physicist named James Van Allen at the University of Iowa, detected radiation levels that made no sense until Van Allen realized the satellite was passing through belts of trapped particles surrounding the planet. It was, at the time, considered one of the great discoveries of the space age. The boundary of Earth, it turned out, was not the top of the atmosphere. It was much, much higher. An invisible frontier where the planet's magnetic influence gives way to the raw environment of space. The Sumerians described a ceiling. They gave its height, and the height they gave lands on a real, physical, invisible boundary that no human being could have detected without instruments launched beyond the atmosphere. Consider what the Sumerians did not have. They had no telescopes. The telescope would not be invented for another 4,000 years. They had no high-altitude instruments of any kind. The highest any Sumerian ever stood was the top of a ziggurat, perhaps 100 feet above the plain. They had no mathematical framework for calculating distances to objects in space. They did not know the Earth was a sphere. They did not know it orbited the Sun. Their entire observational toolkit consisted of the naked eye, the horizon, and patience. And yet the tablet in question, carbon dated through its archaeological context to approximately 2400 BC, records the altitude of a magnetospheric boundary that the most advanced civilization in human history only located in 1958, using a satellite, a Geiger counter, and the accumulated physics of Newton, Maxwell, and Einstein. To be clear about the chronology, that is a gap of nearly 4,400 years between the inscription and the confirmation, 44 centuries in which no one on Earth possessed the tools to check the number, and therefore no one had any reason to take it seriously. According to researchers who have examined the leaked partial translations, the figure sat in the text the entire time, unread or dismissed, filed away in the same institutional silence that swallowed George Smith's missing diaries. There are only two conventional explanations. The first is coincidence. The scribe invented a large number, and the large number happens to land within 3% of a real boundary. Statisticians who have looked at the claim note that this is possible, though the odds are uncomfortable. The second is that the conversion itself is being manipulated, that the value of the Beru is being chosen to force the match. We will return to that objection later in this video, honestly and directly, because it deserves a serious answer rather than a dismissal. But hold on to this fact. The number exists, the line exists, the unit exists, and the boundary exists. The tablet, however, does not end with the height of the vault. The scribe had more to say about what lies above the ceiling, about the waters, about the ones stationed beyond them. What comes next in the text is where scientific curiosity transforms into something else entirely. After establishing the height of the vault, the scribe writes a passage that has been translated by multiple researchers working independently, and all of them arrive at roughly the same conclusion. The most widely accepted translation reads, "Above the vault, the waters, above the waters, the place above the place. There, those who watch, they do not sleep, they do not look away, they measure the days of men." Read it again slowly. Above the vault, the waters. Above the waters, the place above the place. And there, watchers. Watchers who do not sleep. Watchers who do not look away. Watchers who measure the days of men. The idea of waters above the sky is not by itself unique. It appears across the ancient Near East, and most famously it appears in the opening chapter of the biblical book of Genesis, which describes God creating a firmament to separate the waters above from the waters below. For generations, scholars assumed this was Hebrew cosmology, an original vision. But the tablet from Nineveh predates the earliest written form of Genesis by at least 2,000 years, and it describes the same architecture in the same order. The solid vault, the waters resting above the vault, and above those waters, a distinct region, the place above the place. The difference, the crucial difference, is what the Sumerian text puts in that region. Genesis puts nothing there. The tablet puts a population there. The scribe gives these beings a name, the Agigi. The term is translated by most scholars as those who watch, and it is not an invention of this one tablet. The Agigi appear in dozens of other Sumerian and Akkadian texts, where they are consistently described as a class of celestial beings, distinct from and subordinate to the Anunnaki. The distinction matters. In Sumerian cosmology, the Anunnaki were the great gods, the ones who descended to Earth, who walked in the temples, who dealt with kings. The Agigi were the ones who remained above. The Anunnaki came down. The Agigi stayed. The Anunnaki ruled. The Agigi observed. Most Assyriologists treat this as theological bureaucracy, a heavenly org chart, nothing more. And in most texts, that reading works perfectly well. But in this tablet, the scribe does something no other surviving text does. He tells us where the Agigi are. Not vaguely. Not in the heavens. He describes them as occupying a fixed station, and the phrasing is specific. According to the translations that have circulated among researchers, the text distinguishes between places the gods travel to and return from, and this place which is described as permanent, unmoving, position that does not rise with the stars and does not set with them. The scribe uses a construction that one translator rendered as the anchored place, a point in the sky that holds still while everything else turns. Anyone who has ever watched the night sky for more than an hour knows how strange that is. Everything in the sky moves. The stars wheel around the celestial pole, the planets wander, the moon races through its phases. To an observer in 2400 BC, nothing visible in the heavens stood still. Nothing. And yet the scribe insists on it. A station that does not move. And then the tablet does the thing that more than any other detail has kept it circulating in quiet academic conversations for decades. It provides coordinates for this station. 3 of them. The first 2 are astronomical references, sightlines essentially, specifying a region of the sky relative to 2 named stars. The star names are archaic, but Sumerian star catalogues are well documented. The identifications are considered reliable. When modern researchers plotted those 2 sightlines against current star charts, adjusting for 4,400 years of precession, the slow wobble of Earth's axis, the lines converged on a region of space directly along the axis between the Earth and the Sun. That region has a name in modern physics. It is called the first Lagrange point, L1. For anyone unfamiliar, the Lagrange points are 5 positions in space where the gravitational pulls of 2 large bodies, in this case the Earth and the Sun, balance in such a way that a smaller object placed there can remain effectively stationary relative to both. It does not orbit the Earth the way the Moon does. It does not drift. It holds its position indefinitely as the Earth carries it around the Sun, an anchored place, a station that does not move. The mathematics required to even conceive of such a point did not exist until Isaac Newton formulated his laws of gravitation in 1687. The points themselves were not calculated until 1772, when the mathematician Joseph Louis Lagrange worked out the solution as an exercise in what was then cutting-edge celestial mechanics. Today, L1 is prime real estate. Space agencies park satellites there deliberately. Solar observatories like SOHO, launched in 1995, sit at L1 precisely because it is the one place where a spacecraft can watch the Earth-Sun system continuously, without ever sleeping, without ever looking away. Hold the Sumerian phrase next to that. They do not sleep, they do not look away. And then there is the third coordinate. It is not a sightline, it is a distance written in bearers, the same unit the scribe used for the height of the vault. The number recorded is large, and when the standard conversion of approximately 7 miles per bearu is applied, the result comes out to approximately 930,000 miles from the surface of the Earth. The actual distance from Earth to the L1 Lagrange point averages roughly 930,000 miles, about 1/100th of the distance to the Sun. The tablet's figure falls within a remarkably small margin of the real value. 2 sightlines converging on L1 and a distance matching L1, recorded in the same passage, describing the same anchored place. Think about what that requires. To specify L1, you need to know the Earth orbits the Sun. You need to know both masses. You need Newtonian gravitation and the mathematics of the restricted 3-body problem. The Sumerians, by every academic account, possessed none of this. They believed the Earth was a flat disk beneath a solid dome. A civilization that did not know the Earth moved recorded the precise location of a point in space that requires advanced orbital mechanics even to conceive of, and placed watchers there. Permanent ones. The scribe recorded it with total confidence. So the tablet has told us where the watchers are. The question the scribe answers next is the one you're probably already asking. What are they doing there? 3 words dominate the remainder of the text. They appear in every partial translation that is circulated, and every translator, working from different photographs and different fragments, renders them the same way. The first is Namulu, the counting of humans, not the counting of cattle or grain or silver, all of which had their own well-attested administrative terms in Sumerian record keeping. The scribe chose a construction that specifically means the enumeration of people. The second is Kingalu, the measure, or the assessment. The word carries a bureaucratic weight in other Sumerian documents. It is the term a temple official would use when evaluating a harvest against a quota, something being weighed against a standard. The third is Shungalu, translated unsettlingly consistently as the Great One Who Waits. Put the 3 together, and the passage seems to say something very simple and very strange. The beings stationed at the anchored place are counting humans, measuring something about humanity, and waiting. A census, an evaluation, a pause before something. Counting toward what? Waiting for what? The scribe does not leave the question open. He answers it with a number. The number is written out in cuneiform across 2 lines of the tablet, using the standard Sumerian sexagesimal notation, the base 60 system that, incidentally, is the reason your clock still has 60 minutes in an hour and your compass has 360 degrees. Sexagesimal numerals are well understood. Reading them is not controversial, and this particular figure has been read and verified by multiple independent translators, each working separately, each arriving at the same value. The number is 7.412 billion, 7,412 million, written by hand in wet clay by a temple scribe in Mesopotamia approximately 4,400 years ago. To understand how impossible that number is, you have to understand the world the scribe lived in. When the tablet was inscribed around 2400 BC, the entire human population of Earth was approximately 27 million people. That is the accepted estimate among demographers, roughly the population of a single modern metropolitan area. The largest city on the planet at the time was likely Uruk or Ur, home to perhaps 60,000 souls, and a Sumerian standing on its walls would have believed he was looking at the very centre of the inhabited world. The scribe had no concept of continents he had never heard of, no concept of the Americas, of Eastern Asia's river valleys, of the full breadth of Africa. His entire mental map of humanity might have contained a few million people at most. There was no context, none, in which a person of that era could have conceived of 7 billion human beings as a demographic reality. The number is not a rounding of anything he could see. It is not a poetic exaggeration. Sumerian texts inflate numbers in predictable ways, using tidy multiples of 60 and 3,600. This number is not tidy. It is oddly, uncomfortably specific. 7,412 million, and the tablet does not present it as a count of anything existing. It presents it as a threshold. According to the most widely accepted translation, the passage reads, "When the number of the counted reaches this number, the Kingaloo ends." When the count reaches 7,412 million, the assessment ends, the measuring stops, and something else begins. Now hold that ancient threshold up against the modern record. Earth's human population, according to United Nations demographic data, crossed 7 billion in October 2011, a milestone covered by every major news organisation in the world. The climb continued, roughly 80 million additional people per year, and in 2022 the global population passed 7,400 million and moved through the tablet's exact figure, 7,412 million. Somewhere in the early part of that year, before crossing the more celebrated milestone of 8 billion that November. Which means that if the tablet is what it appears to be, the threshold it names, the number at which the counting ends and the waiting stops, was not some remote abstraction. It was a date, and that date from where you are sitting right now is already in the past. The count by the tablet's own arithmetic is complete. According to the leaked translations, the scribe understood exactly what the completion of the count would mean because the next line of the text describes it. This is the line that more than the altitude, more than the coordinates, more than the census, has made this tablet something that institutions apparently preferred to keep uncatalogued and undiscussed. Multiple translators have rendered it with only trivial differences in wording. The most widely accepted version reads, "When the count is complete, they will descend, open the vault, and walk among the counted." They will descend, open the vault, and walk among the counted. No elaboration follows in the legible portion of the text. No description of what the descent looks like. No timeline between the completion of the count and the opening of the vault. No indication of whether the counted should expect the event within a year, a generation, or an age. The scribe simply records the sequence in the flat declarative grammar of a man writing down something he considers settled fact, the same grammar he used for the height of the sky and the position of the anchored place. First the counting, then the threshold, then the descent. Notice what the line does not say. It does not say they will judge. It does not say they will destroy or punish or harvest, the verbs you would expect from apocalyptic literature and the verbs later traditions reliably reach for. Sumerian has rich vocabulary for all of those, and the scribe uses none of it. He chooses the plainest possible verb, to walk. As if the descent were not an ending at all, but an arrival. As if the watchers, having finished their long assessment, would simply come down and take their place among us the way an owner, after years away, walks back onto his own land. Whether that reading is a mercy or the most frightening interpretation of all is something worth sitting with. There is one more line after it, a final legible sentence at the bottom edge of the tablet, partially damaged, which we will come to before this video ends. But before we go there, it is time to stop and do something this subject rarely gets, an honest accounting of what in all of this can actually be verified and what cannot. The tablet deserves that scrutiny. So does the count. Now it's important to be honest here about what can and cannot be verified. This channel owes you that, and this story demands it more than most. Start with the solid ground, that George Smith existed, that he excavated at Nineveh, and that he died of dysentery in Aleppo in August of 1876, at the age of 36, is documented historical fact. His death is recorded, his obituaries were published, his earlier discoveries, including the flood narrative of the Epic of Gilgamesh, made him famous in his own lifetime. That the library of Ashurbanipal at Nineveh yielded tens of thousands of tablets, many still unread and untranslated to this day, is a fact. And the intellectual achievements of Mesopotamian astronomy are not fringe claims, they are academic consensus. The Babylonian astronomers who inherited Sumerian methods calculated the length of the lunar month to within seconds of the modern value. They tracked planetary cycles across centuries. They left us the base 60 mathematics we still keep time with. None of that is in dispute. But the specific tablet described in this video occupies far murkier territory. The source material provides no verifiable catalogue number, and in Assyriology, the catalogue number is everything. It is the difference between an object and a rumour. The accounts surrounding it claim the number was deliberately withheld, that access to the tablet has been quietly and systematically denied, that the relevant translations exist only as leaks. Notice what those claims have in common. Every single one of them is, by construction, impossible to confirm or refute from the outside. An object you cannot locate cannot be examined. A suppression you cannot document cannot be disproven. That structure should make you cautious. It is exactly the shape a fabrication would take, and it is also, to be fair, exactly the shape a genuine suppression would take. The evidence is silent either way. The numbers deserve the same scrutiny. The correspondence between 12,000 Barus and the Van Allen boundary is striking, but the Baru is attested at slightly different values in different periods, and the Sumerian sexagesimal system permits multiple plausible conversions. Choose one value and you land within 3% of the magnetosphere. Choose another and you land nowhere. Selecting the conversion that produces the match, after already knowing the answer, is the textbook definition of confirmation bias. The same caution applies to the L1 distance. And cuneiform itself is a notoriously ambiguous writing system. Many signs carry 3 or 4 possible readings depending on context, and it is entirely possible that the most chilling translations rest on the least common interpretations of a handful of critical terms, and there is a perfectly respectable skeptical reading of the entire text. In 1987, the German scholar Hinrich Wickmar published an analysis arguing that the tablet, or the tradition behind it, is priestly propaganda, a theological instrument designed to convince a restless population that unsleeping divine auditors were watching, counting and assessing them, and that obedience to the temple was therefore the only rational course. Divine surveillance as social control. It is an old trick, and the Sumerian priesthood would not have been the last institution to use it. Wickmar's interpretation was widely accepted in traditional academic circles, and it should not be dismissed. It explains the watchers, it explains the counting. But here is what it does not explain. It does not explain the altitude. Propaganda has no need to encode the height of a magnetospheric boundary its authors could not detect. It does not explain the coordinates, sightlines converging on a gravitational equilibrium point that would not be calculated for another 4,100 years. And it does not explain the threshold, a population figure with no symbolic shape, no round sexagesimal tidiness, that humanity happened to cross in 2022. 1 match might be luck, 2 begins to strain it, 3 specific independent numerically precise correspondences, altitude, position, population, is a pattern. And patterns demand explanations, even uncomfortable ones. Coincidence, lost knowledge, or something else entirely. The tablet doesn't tell us, it only forces us to ask. Which brings us finally to the last legible line, the damaged sentence at the bottom edge of the tablet. According to the accounts that have circulated, this single line is the reason the museum's chief Assyriologist at the time refused to include the tablet in the official catalogue. Not the altitude, not the coordinates, not even the descent, this line. In the translation that generated the most controversy, it reads, "We are the flock of the silent ones," 5 words in English, a handful of signs in clay, and an entire cosmology folded inside them, because a flock is not an accident, and a flock is not free. A flock is kept, a flock is counted and measured and watched over by something that stands apart from it, something that does not announce itself, something silent. Whether that phrase is priestly metaphor exactly as Wickmar would insist, or the plain confession of a scribe recording something he genuinely believed his civilization had witnessed, is a question the clay will never answer for us. But it has a way of staying with you after the video ends. It stayed with a museum official strongly enough that he kept it out of the record. And if the accounts are true, it may have stayed with George Smith all the way to Aleppo. So what strikes you most about all of this? That a civilization without telescopes recorded the altitude of a magnetospheric boundary 4,400 years before Explorer 1 found it? That they marked a point in space requiring mathematics that would not exist until 1772? Or that they wrote down a population threshold, 7.412 billion, that you personally were alive to see crossed? And if even one of those correspondences is real, where did the knowledge come from? Who was counting? And is the count truly complete? Let us know in the comments. The best theories from this community always end up in the follow-up videos. Thank you so much for watching Legacy of the Unknown.